Hi, I'm Bess.
And I'm Raphael.
And we are Two Peas in a Kitchen.
In today's video, we're going to show you how to make an easy cheddar and jalapeno bread recipe that will knock your socks off.
As always, we will share time-saving tips and tricks to help home cooks make easy, elegant eats.
If this sounds like exactly what you need, hit that subscribe button and join us in the fun.
This bread is super delicious. I can't even tell you how amazing it smells, and we're going to give you some super easy peasy tips to help you make this ahead of time if you want. This really looks gorgeous. Very simple ingredients. We're going to be using King Arthur bread flour, not all-purpose flour, Red Star quick rise. This is their quick rise yeast in a jar. You can also buy it in little envelopes. You need 1 3/4 cups of cold water, about 2 tablespoons of chopped jalapeno peppers. For this, you can either use the ones in the jar or you can use fresh. I've used the ones in the jar, and these are spicy because I like things spicy, but you can use mild or whichever ones you like. You're gonna need 1.5 cups of shredded cheese. You can shred it yourself or you can just buy pre-shredded cheese to make things easier. And we're using a high quality sea salt.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do is measure our flour. So we're going to need 3.5 cups of our King Arthur bread flour. And the way we like to measure this is the following. So I have my 1 cup. So I'm going to actually spoon it into the measuring cup and then level it off with a knife. So 3.5 cups of bread flour. I'm going to do it over this bowl so I don't make a mess. So once you have your mound of flour, go over the top a little bit and then level it off. And then put it in your mixing bowl. And that's our 3.5 cups of flour. Now, for reference, moving forward, when you make this recipe, so when I make this recipe now, I just weigh it. As you can see, I have it sitting on a kitchen scale. It's much easier this way. You'll end up with about 525 grams of bread flour. If you want to find out exactly why we prefer spooning it into the measuring cup versus going right into the bag like this and then leveling it off, check out our country bread recipe. The link will be in the description of the video. There's actually quite a drastic difference, so make sure you don't miss that.
Okay, now that Raphael has measured out our flour and we've weighed it, we're ready to move on to our other ingredients that we have here. So the next thing that we're going to add is 1/2 teaspoon of Red Star quick rise yeast. Next ingredient is 1.5 teaspoons of a high quality sea salt, not kosher salt. Okay. Next, we're going to add our 1 3/4 cups of cold water. Do not use hot water with this recipe. It will cause your bread to rise too quickly. So what I like to do, oh, there's some air coming out of there. What I like to do is I like to give this a little mix and start consolidating all of the ingredients before I'm adding the cheddar cheese and the jalapenos. So if you've watched our previous video for our country bread, you'll see that this is basically how we did that bread because we weren't putting any add-ons in the bread. I like to just kind of get it all consolidated. You can use a fork. And another thing is that you can do this recipe if you have a KitchenAid mixer or another countertop mixer. You can do this recipe from this point using your bread hook. You don't want to over knead it, and if you're using it with our cheddar and jalapeno add-ons, you would use it just for a few minutes with the bread hook to let the ingredients consolidate, and then you would stop right where I'm about to stop here to begin to incorporate our add-ins. You can see we're starting to get a kind of raggedy dough going here. So now I'm going to go ahead and add our other ingredients. We're going to be using 1.5 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, and we're going to be using 2 tablespoons of chopped jalapenos. One thing that's another really great thing about this recipe is it's a little bit changeable. You can also just do it with the cheddar. You don't have to add the jalapenos. It's delicious with the jalapenos, but you don't have to if you're cooking for people who maybe don't like spicy food or don't like peppers. We're going to sprinkle in 2 pretty generous tablespoons of chopped jalapenos. And like I said before, you can do this with fresh jalapenos, or you can do it with the jarred pickled ones, which is what we are using here. And the ones that I chose are spicy. Okay, so as you can see now, after some working with this big fork here, everything is now incorporated into this ragged dough. And if you have used a KitchenAid mixer, it should look about the same. You don't want to over mix it with your mixer. You don't want to over knead it with your mixer. So I just kind of work it from the bottom. You want to make sure all the dry flour is incorporated from the bottom of the bowl, which it is here, and that all of our mix-ins, our jalapenos and our cheddar cheese, is equally sort of distributed throughout this dough ball, and it should look like this. You'll notice that it's a little sticky to the edge of the bowl and to the bottom, and that's okay. You don't need to worry about that. I would not add more flour. You want it to be a little bit sticky like that, and it should look just like that.
Now that you have your dough ball, it's time to let your dough rise. So here's our easy peasy tip. So you have one of 2 options. If you want, you can start and make the bread completely from start to finish in the same day. But if you do that, you'll have to get up in the morning, mix up your dough, cover it up with plastic. Just use a sheet of plastic. Just lightly cover it up. You don't have to make it tight. And let it sit on your kitchen counter for 8 to 10 hours before we proceed. Or, this is a time-saving tip, if you'd like to mix up the dough the day before, the evening before, what you can do is then place it in your refrigerator, covered in your plastic, overnight. And when you're ready, right before you're ready to bake the bread, then you would take it out of the refrigerator and let it sit at least 45 minutes on your kitchen counter after you take it out, or up to 2 hours before you proceed on to the next step.
Okay, so now our dough has either been sitting out on the counter for 8 to 12 hours, or we've used our easy peasy tip, which was putting the dough into the refrigerator the night before you want to cook it. And if you've done that, you've taken it out of the refrigerator and you've had it sitting on your counter for 45 minutes or up to 2 hours. This dough is now really changed in size. You can see it's like at least almost 2 times the size of what it was when we put it in the bowl. So we have one more step before we're ready to bake our bread. We're going to take the bread and we're going to move around this ball of dough like this, kind of stretching it and punching it right into the middle, kind of reincorporating all those yummy add-ins that you see in there, our jalapenos and our cheddar. And you can see the dough is really nice and smooth. It's going to be much easier to form a nice ball here. I usually like to take just a teeny bit of flour just around the edges of that, kind of work it in to the sides like that. So you can go around the bowl maybe 2 times, and then I just kind of pull it off the bottom like that and flip it over. And we are now going to let this sit on the counter for about 45 minutes. I just take my same plastic wrap. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just going to do one more short rise before we are ready to pop it in the oven.
So while your dough ball is undergoing its second rise, after you're done folding it over like Bess just showed, you'll want to preheat your Dutch oven, place your Dutch oven inside of your oven, and set your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit and let it preheat while you're waiting. Now, why do we use a Dutch oven? So I have a separate one here. I'm not burning myself. Why do we want to use a Dutch oven when we're making this bread? And the reason is because in our home ovens, we don't have steam injection like they use in fancy professional bakeries for their ovens. And so in order to replicate the formation of steam, we're going to use our Dutch oven. So as you'll see shortly, the dough will be placed inside of the preheated oven, in the preheated Dutch oven inside of your oven, and then we're going to place the lid on top. And what that does is the water in your dough is going to evaporate and create a very steamy environment inside of your Dutch oven. And that will delay the formation of the crust, while allowing for the dough to have a nice, beautiful rise. So you're going to have a lot bigger rise out of your dough than you were if you were to just place it in the oven without your Dutch oven. So partially baked it, you're going to partially bake it with the lid on, and then we'll show you, we're going to take the lid off, and that's when you get your beautiful golden crust on your bread.
Okay, so now our dough, after I've gone through that process of pulling it and punching it from the sides, has been sitting on the counter for about 45 minutes, and it's done its short second rise. And we're ready for the moment of truth here. We're going to get it ready to put in the oven. So I'm going to use unbleached parchment paper. I like the sheets, they're just a little easier to deal with. And you're going to get that ready on your counter here. The dough is going to be a little sticky, so you have to sort of work it away from the bowl a little bit. And then you're just going to plop it right in the middle of your parchment paper sheet. Just like that. And don't worry if it's sticky like that, that's the proper texture. That's what we're looking for. So once we get it kind of in the middle of the parchment paper there, I do sprinkle a little bit of flour on it. We're gonna use that just to kind of help work it into the middle of the parchment paper there. Now, the first thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna make 3 scores on the top of the dough ball. You don't have to do this, but it really makes the crust look beautiful when it's done cooking. It kind of opens up and you'll see the difference between the crust and sort of the inside of the bread. The next thing that I'm going to do is, actually before I do that, I have to edit that out. We're going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on the top of our dough ball here. And then I have some whole pieces of jalapeno pepper. These are the same ones that we use, the chopped ones that are inside of it. And I'm just gonna stick a couple of them on top of our bread dough ball. They end up drying out when the bread cooks and they look really, really beautiful at the end. So now this is our dough ball and it is ready to pop into the oven. Okay, now that your dough is ready to stick into the oven, if you take the corners of your parchment paper and make a little pouch like this, that'll make it really easy to carry over to your hot Dutch oven that's preheated in the oven so that we can stick it right in. Okay, we're now over at our preheated oven. We have our little dough wrapped in its parchment pouch. The oven's really hot, so you need to be careful on this step that you do not burn yourself. This is our very hot Dutch oven. We're just gonna take the bread pouch and plop it right into the hot Dutch oven. Be really careful you don't burn yourself. I usually open it up a little bit, and then you're just gonna stick the top right on top of that open parchment paper, push it back in the oven, and close your oven. So now that we have the dough in the oven, we're gonna cook it with the top on for 30 minutes. So I'm gonna set my oven timer here for 30 minutes, and we'll let that cook.
Okay, so now that the bread has been baking in the Dutch oven inside of your oven for 30 minutes, we're going to take the lid off and let it continue to bake for another 15 minutes. Okay, the lid is off. Close the oven and let it bake for another 15 minutes, and then we'll take the bread out. And this is a moment that we always wait for when we're done making our bread. One more look at that. Isn't that gorgeous?
I mean, it really looks professional.
It does.
It's whenever I take this bread anywhere, people just cannot believe that I made this.
I still can't believe it at how easy it is. Let's cut into it and see what it looks like.
It smells amazing.
Oh my God. Oh my God, look at that cheddar.
It's just beautiful.
Look at the texture,
beautiful.
the holes.
Looks amazing. Smells amazing.
Let's taste it.
All right. The moment of truth. Listen to that crust when you cut into it. It sounds amazing.
All right.
Okay, here we go. It's the best part, breaking bread with our friends.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
The texture is amazing with this, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
It's a spiritual experience, isn't it?
It is. This bread is incredible. This would be amazing. This bread would be amazing with a cheese board. It would be amazing with chili. This bread would be amazing really in any sort of Tex-Mex meal you might be cooking, but it is so delicious on its own. It would really make a great panini or a sandwich. It's really incredible. Highly recommend that you try this. I think everyone will love it. And like I said before, you don't have to add the jalapenos. It's also a great loaf if you just want to do like a cheddar bread. So a second easy peasy tip about all of our breads that I just wanted to point out again is that these breads and this cheddar jalapeno bread freezes beautifully. So one of the things that I do when I just want to keep homemade bread around in the house is I'll cut the bread into quarters like this, and I will freeze it. And you can do it even just by plopping it right into a baggie, or you can wrap it in a little bit of parchment paper and stick it into some saran wrap or foil. And it just freezes really easily. The other thing is that this makes amazing toast, and we like to store it in the refrigerator. So after we make it and it's cooled completely, we'll just plop it right into a baggie, stick it right in the refrigerator, and then you can take it out the next day and slice it and make toast. That's the best way to store it for a longer period of time. It doesn't have any preservatives or anything in it, so it's not as good if you keep it out on the counter. So again, our second easy peasy tip with our bread is freezing it, store it in the refrigerator, and you'll be able to enjoy it for a few days to come.
We hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you've tried making this bread, make sure you leave us a comment down below to let us know what you think. The link to the blog post is in the description below for reference as well.
And also, please join our pod, subscribe to our channel, and please continue to join us on all of our cooking adventures. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye for now.